This group, filled with hope and having endured many hardships, sought only to find a haven in this post-apocalyptic world, but what met their eyes was a dense crowd of zombies. Janice couldn't believe what she was seeing in the distance, and everyone else was in disbelief too. They had put everything on the line to get here, only to face such a grim outcome, and a wave of negativity spread among them. Alicia insisted they couldn't give up, especially after everything they had been through, including Tom's sacrifice. Charlie suggested going back to the bridge, but that was unrealistic. They were exhausted and returning was impossible. Victor suggested they had another option. Althea immediately turned off the camera, realizing Victor meant seeking help from Virginia. She didn't want to record this, as it negated everything they had done, but in reality, it was just Victor voicing this option, and the majority of the group had tacitly accepted it. They had sick people and children who couldn't just wait to die. Everyone fell silent, grappling with the harsh reality that ideals and reality often differ, and most choose survival. Morgan felt bad, but it seemed to be the only way out. Reluctantly, Althea agreed to contact Virginia.
You call her. There's no going back.
Dwight warned that joining Virginia meant they might one day be unable to face themselves. Dwight began his self-redemption when he met Morgan's team, finding a renewed sense of purpose among them. If Morgan and others decide to rely on Virginia, he will choose to leave. He would rather die in the wilderness than return to a life like his previous one with the Saviors. Seeing this, Naomi apologized profusely for her decision-making as a housekeeper which had got them into this situation. Morgan picked up the walkie-talkie, though no one was happy about it. They silently consented. He began calling Virginia.
Virginia, if you're listening, we need your help.
What will happen to this group of people? Do they really want to give up what they have been doing? Dwight, having left the group, ran frantically until, exhausted, he finally collapsed to the ground. He looked up and saw that he had arrived at the place where Tom was buried. At this time, the walkie-talkie rings and his wife's voice comes out. Dwight quickly responded, but the walkie-talkie only repeated, "Dwight, can you hear me?" No matter how Dwight replied, it was as if the walkie-talkie couldn't hear him. Realizing it might be a hallucination, Dwight threw the device away in frustration. Looking at a distant armored vehicle, Dwight attempted to open the door. Suddenly, he heard a noise and quickly hid under the vehicle. He saw someone on horseback approaching and prepared his weapon, ready for an ambush. Surrender was not an option. To his surprise, there was no rider, just horses without owners. Dwight took a wary look behind him. Again, there were horses with no owners. He didn't know where the horses had come from, but Dwight was happy because it meant something could be done. Meanwhile, Morgan was still discussing details with Virginia. When she learned of Morgan's location, Virginia said, "Ham Canyon was once the largest survival community I've seen, with 260 people. Their fish pond has dried up, but their leader refused my help. I didn't expect it to end up like this." Morgan requested, "We need your help to clear the zombies so we can live here." But Virginia responded, "That's impossible. I'll distribute your people where they're needed. I can only assure the safety of most of them. I can't manage those without value. Should I come to pick you up then?" she asked. Morgan was silent. He looked at the crowd in the distance and then at the zombies, and Morgan said what he didn't want to say.
Yeah.
Then Morgan said in front of the crowd that he was sorry. They heard the neighing of horses in the distance and, thinking it was an enemy attack, grabbed their weapons and rushed out. To their relief and smiles, it was Dwight returning with several horses. Dwight suggested, "We might be able to survive here." The group was confused at first. Dwight explained, "Don't you see? The horses I found near the armored vehicle mean there's a water source nearby. We can live here." This made the group realize Virginia's claim about the dried-up fish pond was a lie. However, the situation was still grim, with countless zombies and a fence that might not hold much longer. They were divided internally. Victor said, "Even if we kill all the zombies, where will we find food and medicine?" He still leaned toward joining Virginia, but Dwight countered, "If there's water, there will be fish." Daniel added, "There's another big problem. Virginia won't leave without a fight." Dwight insisted they shouldn't join them, fearing they might become the next Tom. "I owe my life to you all. I really want to keep going." John suggested, "We clear this place and then fight them, but we're low on weapons and ammo. Virginia could easily defeat us with half her people, and the fence is about to collapse." Persuaded by Dwight, they decided to hold out a little longer. Morgan, looking at the sign, came up with a plan. The plan was to divert the zombie horde and concentrate them near the armored vehicle, hidden from view. Virginia and her people, upon seeing the abandoned armored vehicle on the road, would certainly not give up. They would then use the large army of zombies against Virginia, solving both problems at once. After the zombies were lured away, the group entered the small town. Althea effortlessly killed a zombie and discovered something on its body. With the zombies gone, the place was eerily empty. Though somewhat run down, a bit of renovation could make it quite suitable for living. There was even a church that could serve as a temporary gathering point for everyone. Sarah noticed Althea seemed hesitant to speak, fiddling with the item in her hand. Althea revealed, "I know where those horses came from. Look, these are what I found on that zombie. They're Virginia's team's identification tags. It seems her people were here and died here," she added. Meanwhile, several others were leading the zombies forward on horseback. Grace has not been well and Morgan is worried about her, so he takes Grace with him wherever he goes. John was confident that this operation would succeed, not only diminishing Virginia's arrogance but also forcing them to waste ammunition on clearing zombies. Unaware, they were nearing an armored vehicle. Dwight suggested a plan. "There's a lawn over the hill. We can lead the zombies there and lie in wait." It was their route, and seeing the armored car, Virginia and her party were sure to stop. "That's when we strike hard." Morgan began assigning tasks. Daniel and Victor were to signal from their position, while the rest led the zombies to the other side of the hill. Without delay, Victor and Daniel went to find a hiding spot, and the rest continued with the zombies. Naomi thanked Dwight, acknowledging his choice to stand with them despite the chance to find his wife through Virginia's group. Dwight confessed he once thought he heard his wife's voice over the radio, possibly a hallucination from exhaustion. "But now, I won't lose myself in the search for her. When we reunite, I want to proudly tell her about the meaningful things I've done, not like before, doing terrible things in her search." Dwight reflected, "I also don't want a Virginia hanging over us when we reunite," he added. Then, they turned a corner, leading the zombies towards the other side of the hill, preparing to ambush Virginia's group. Daniel and Victor soon hid near the armored vehicle, ready to signal John once Virginia lingered there. The others positioned themselves around the zombie horde to prevent dispersion. John kept a close eye on his girlfriend Naomi, knowing the risk involved in attracting zombies. One wrong move, and escape would be nearly impossible. They awaited Daniel's signal to lead the zombies towards the armored vehicle. Soon, Virginia's vehicle appeared in Daniel's binoculars. Victor swiftly whistled into the walkie-talkie, a prearranged code to avoid eavesdropping, followed closely by two more vehicles. Hearing Victor's signal, they began leading the zombies towards the armored vehicle. Dwight was in charge of attracting the stray zombies, but his horse seemed to become temperamental and somewhat uncontrollable. As expected, Virginia's group stopped their vehicles. The armored car, too valuable to abandon, had previously been used by Morgan's group to cross a bridge. After some distance, it ran out of fuel, but now it served as an excellent bait. Virginia, eyeing the prized vehicle, ordered her people to refuel the armored car and drive it away. Then, Daniel spotted someone through his binoculars. Victor took the binoculars and saw that they were letting Luciana drive the small tanker. This complicated matters. John's walkie-talkie whistles again and they don't understand what's going on. Then Daniel says the operation is cancelled and to hold the zombies back because they've brought Luciana with them. With no other choice, as their own person was there, they had to turn around with the zombies. Dwight's horse was circling in one place and soon got surrounded by several zombies. Dwight had to resort to hacking at the zombies with his axe. Naomi noticed Dwight's predicament. He was nearly engulfed by the zombie horde, making rescue difficult. The zombies crowding around Dwight increased in number, and it seemed he would soon become their prey. Left with no other option, Dwight stood on the horse's back and leaped towards the distance. The horse was overpowered and brought down by the zombies, who swarmed over it. The others, unable to see Dwight, kept calling out, fearing the worst. Luckily, they saw Dwight running towards the distance, and because of his injured leg, his running speed was not fast. After Dwight had run for some distance, a river blocked his way. It was a dead end. Fortunately, John and the others caught up just in time. They spread out to distract the zombies and alleviate the pressure on Dwight. Carefully probing their surroundings, they managed to attract a few zombies. However, many still pursued Dwight. Despite the escalating danger, Dwight continued to shout, urging his teammates to ignore him and focus on controlling the zombie horde. He remained adamant about having them lead the zombies towards the armored vehicle. John directly told him to shut up and not to make any noise, otherwise he couldn't be saved at all. Dwight, while killing the zombies, said, I know exactly what I'm talking about. He believes that living under the rule of people of different faiths distorts beliefs and that bringing zombies there is the right thing to do. Dwight then headed towards the water's edge, not wanting Morgan and the others to waste time on him. Morgan, believing in not abandoning teammates, dismounted and followed Dwight. Dwight's leg injury was severe, and escape seemed impossible. Morgan was forced to kill the advancing zombies, but more kept coming from behind. John and the others rushed over. It's impossible for them to abandon their teammates. That's why Dwight insisted on not surrendering. He couldn't let go of his team. Everyone deserves to be saved. John came up with a plan to escape the zombies and said, "You two hide. We'll give the zombies a bath." Dwight and Morgan quickly hid in the bushes nearby. John and the others then rode their horses across the river. Grace and the rest kept calling out from the water, effectively attracting the zombies into the river. The strong current of the river was too much for the zombies, sweeping them away downstream. The zombies that were originally used against Virginia's team were taken away by the current. This left them without their key advantage, the zombie horde, in any conflict with Virginia. If there's a conflict with Virginia, they won't be able to defend themselves. Morgan remarked, "We're still alive, and that's enough." On Daniel's side, Victor has the armored car's starter and is ready to negotiate a deal. Without the starter, the armored car was useless. Even with fuel, back in town, they discovered several bodies, former residents, all killed by gunshot wounds, a testament to Virginia's brutal methods. Althea concluded that if they refused Virginia's help, their fate wouldn't be any better.
That's where the horses came from. If we fight her, we'll die too.
The situation became difficult to handle. They hadn't anticipated Virginia to be so ruthless and inhumane, leaving them with no real choices. Alicia, still defiant, wanted to fight back, but Morgan pointed out the stark reality. They were outnumbered, and their only chance, the zombie horde, was gone. Morgan emphasized survival over defeat, insisting on keeping everyone alive rather than surrendering. Dwight challenged the idea, questioning if they were meant to surrender. Morgan continued, asserting that while Virginia could control their movements and even separate them, she could never destroy their spirit. And that's how the team ended, and everyone was a little bummed about it. There was one more thing they had to do before Virginia arrived. Alicia and Wes decorated the church for John and Naomi's wedding, a brief respite in their grim reality. Naomi donned a simple green dress, and John wore a sharp suit. With over 30 witnesses, including Charlie playing music, Daniel watched with a mix of envy and nostalgia, as if witnessing his own daughter's wedding. Jacob, the pastor, officiated but noticed John's lack of rings. John could only say that he hadn't found a replacement. Dwight stepped forward, offering his and his wife's wedding rings. Expressing gratitude to John and Naomi, Naomi misinterpreted this as Dwight giving up on finding his wife. However, Dwight clarified he hadn't given up and wouldn't let Virginia use his wife as a bargaining chip, vowing to find her in his own way. John didn't hesitate to accept Dwight's good intentions. They exchanged rings and officially became husband and wife. Everyone around applauded. This ceremony was incredibly important to them. It also offered a glimmer of hope to the other survivors. With Charlie's music and Daniel's singing, smiles appeared on everyone's faces. Althea captured all these moments. The sunlight streaming through the roof onto the stage seemed like a blessing from the sky, creating a beautifully warm and intimate scene. But the tranquility was shattered by the sound of a car horn outside. Without a doubt, Virginia and her people had arrived. They had to take their weapons and go out to negotiate. Morgan, as the leader, stepped out with a few others. The first vehicle to come along was the armored car, which Victor had obviously given them the starter for. A figure appeared above the armored car, none other than the hypocritical Virginia. "I heard from Victor that you guys were up to something. Too bad it didn't work out," she said. It seemed Victor had traded the starter for some advantage of his own. Morgan replied, "We will accept your help." Virginia was pleased with Morgan's attitude, but Morgan added, "You have to take all of us, including the sick Grace and the elderly, weak, and disabled. Provide medical services immediately. We all go, or none of us do. We need assurance that we won't lose anyone. Otherwise, it's a no-go. Even one person less is unacceptable, or it'll be a loss for both sides." Virginia looked at a determined Morgan for a good 10 seconds before reluctantly agreeing to Morgan. She needed many hands for expansion. "Then hurry up and bring the rest out. We have a long way to go," Virginia said. That night, the children were put into a truck, Dwight in another. This was Virginia's shrewdness. She wouldn't let familiar faces stay together, avoiding many potential issues. Even Sarah and Wendell, siblings, were forced to separate. Alicia also confronted Victor, asking if it was he who helped Virginia fix the armored vehicle. Victor replied that it was inevitable, and he might as well curry favor with her, hoping they could cause major internal destruction later. Alicia's signature weapon was confiscated. She had no choice. The situation was beyond her control. Reluctantly, Alicia boarded the vehicle. Daniel urged Victor not to be the same liar when he got there. Charlie was very reluctant to part with Daniel. Daniel assured her that everything would be alright and that he would find a way to reach her. John and his newlywed spouse also couldn't escape the fate of separation. In the end, only Morgan and Grace were left. Not usually one to express his feelings, Morgan finally mustered the courage to confess his love to Grace. Grace was deeply moved by his words. Knowing about Morgan and Grace's relationship, Virginia deliberately brought a doctor to take Grace away. Finally, only Morgan and Virginia remained. Virginia just looked at him. Morgan asked where she intended to take him. Virginia, however, stated that he needed to stay here as his influence among the people was too significant and she had to ensure the stability of her future. Seeing Virginia's actions, Morgan seemed to have guessed her intentions. He appeared unmoved but had clenched his stick tightly in his right hand. Morgan chose to strike first. As the gunshot rang out, they both fell to the ground. Virginia was dazed by Morgan's stick strike. Morgan, shot in the chest, lay in agony. About a minute later, Virginia had regained her senses. Morgan struggled to reach his weapon, but the bleeding from his chest and the pain made it difficult to exert any strength. Virginia, just to be safe, threw Morgan's stick far away. She then took a handgun from a zombie's body. Morgan could only drag his injured body in a desperate struggle. Virginia raised the gun again, ready to finish him off. At that moment, Morgan calmed down and simply looked at Virginia plainly. Virginia said, "I just really hate your face." The situation startled Virginia. Perhaps it was the age of the handgun that allowed Morgan to narrowly escape death. Just then, Virginia's walkie-talkie crackled to life with the voice of the doctor from earlier. He announced that the woman's examination results were in. Morgan, thinking Grace was seriously ill and would be abandoned, pleaded with Virginia not to harm Grace. "No matter how sick Grace is, please don't hurt her," he implored. But the doctor revealed that Grace wasn't ill. She was pregnant. Morgan was in disbelief. Virginia, however, showed a sly smile. The doctor estimated the pregnancy to be about 3 or 4 months along, noting only some malnutrition. At that moment, a group of zombies, likely attracted by the gunshot, emerged behind Virginia. She picked up her hat, ran to her car, and drove away from the scene. With such injuries, Morgan's fate seemed sealed. Aware of his impending end, Morgan spoke into the walkie-talkie. "To anyone who can hear me, my companions, the battles we fought, the tough choices we made, were for everyone's survival, for now and the future. If you're listening, Grace, you must survive." To everyone who can hear this message. And with that, the 5th season of Fear the Walking Dead comes to a dramatic close.